I never imagined my own husband would become my greatest enemy. Yet here I stand in our lavish dining room, watching Daniel hold court like the king he believes himself to be. The crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows across his perfectly tailored suit as he gestures with his wineglass, regaling our family with tales of his latest investment triumph. It was nothing, really, Daniel says with that practiced modesty that makes my jaw clench. Just saw an opportunity that no one else noticed. Sometimes the market hands you these gifts. I adjust a pristine place setting, letting my fingers trail along the edge of the Versace china. If only they knew how many nights I spent poring over those market analyses, while Daniel slept soundly in our bed. How many hours I dedicated to crafting the perfect investment strategy that he now claims as his own divine insight. Vivian, darling, Eleanor, my mother-in-law, calls out with that syrupy tone that sets my teeth on edge. The flowers are lovely, but perhaps next time choose something more sophisticated. Peonies are so common these days. I meet her gaze with a practiced smile. Of course, Eleanor. Your input is always appreciated. The words taste like ash in my mouth, but I've learned to swallow bitterness with grace. Daniel launches into another self-congratulatory story, his voice bouncing off the mahogany-paneled walls. I drift between the guests, topping off wine glasses and nodding at appropriate intervals. My silk dress whispers against the marble floor as I move, a ghost in my own home. The real genius, Olivia, Daniel's sister, pipes up, is how lucky you got with Vivian. She gives me what she probably thinks is a generous smile. I mean, having a wife who's content to handle all the domestic details while you focus on the important work. That's rare these days. The room falls silent for a heartbeat. I feel the weight of eyes on me, waiting to see how I'll react to this thinly veiled slight. My fingers tighten imperceptibly around the wine bottle. A memory flashes. Last year's Christmas dinner, when Daniel dismissed my market prediction about emerging tech stocks. 3 months later, he presented my exact analysis to the board as his own revelation. I see myself sitting silently at that massive oak table, watching him soak in the accolades, while I fade into the expensive wallpaper. She's right, Daniel agrees, raising his glass in my direction. I couldn't do any of this without my supportive wife. His smile doesn't reach his eyes. It never does. I move toward the kitchen, needing a moment to breathe. As I pass the study, I catch fragments of a whispered conversation that makes me pause mid-step. Everything's arranged? Natalie's voice barely audible. The transfer should be completed by. Not here, Daniel cuts her off sharply. We'll discuss it tomorrow. My heart pounds against my ribs, but my face remains perfectly composed. In my mind, I see the hidden USB drive tucked away in my personal safe, filled with months of meticulously gathered evidence. Every late-night phone call, every suspicious transaction, every secret meeting, all documented with the patience of a woman who learned long ago that revenge is a dish best served with precision. I think about the moment 3 months ago when I first discovered the truth. The soft glow of my laptop screen illuminating the trail of offshore accounts. The sickening realization that my husband's financial empire was built on fraud and deception. I remember sitting there in my home office, hands shaking as I uncovered layer after layer of lies. But now, as I return to the dining room with fresh bottles of wine, my hands are steady. I watch Daniel hold court with his family of sycophants, all of them blind to the storm brewing beneath my placid surface. They see what they've always seen. The dutiful wife, the perfect hostess, the quiet supporter of her husband's genius. They have no idea that every dismissive comment, every condescending pat on the head, every stolen credit has been carefully cataloged and stored away. Like a master chess player, I've spent years positioning my pieces, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. My gaze meets Daniel's across the room, and he raises his glass in another empty toast. I smile back, serene and unthreatening, while inside my mind, I begin the countdown to his downfall. He has no idea what's coming. None of them do. And that's exactly how I want it. The laptop screen casts a blue glow across my office as I scrutinize another series of transactions. Each keystroke reveals another layer of Daniel's deception wire transfers to the Cayman Islands. Shell companies registered in Delaware, all carefully obscured beneath a veneer of legitimate business. My fingers trace the edge of a manila folder stuffed with printed emails and bank statements. 3 months of meticulous documentation. 3 months of late nights while Daniel slept soundly, believing his secrets were safe. The irony doesn't escape me. He always dismissed my obsession with details as beneath him. Now those details will be his undoing. I click play on the latest recording, and Daniel's voice fills my office. Of course I value Vivian's input, he says, the condescension dripping from every word. She's excellent at organizing things, but the real financial strategy? That requires a certain instinct she'll never have. Natalie's simpering laugh follows. She's lucky to have you guiding her. Most wives would be completely lost. I pause the recording, my hand steady as I make another notation. 6 months of conversations like this, each one carefully time-stamped and transcribed. The recordings paint a clear picture of Daniel's systematic campaign to undermine me while using my work to bolster his reputation. Mrs. Montgomery? Miranda's voice cuts through my concentration. She stands in the doorway, her normally composed expression tinged with concern. I have those records you requested from the offshore accounts. I gesture for her to close the door. Miranda's heels click against the hardwood as she approaches, spreading printouts across my desk. The patterns match exactly what you suspected. Every major investment victory Daniel claimed, the money was already there, just moved through different channels. And Natalie's involvement? Extensive. Miranda taps a particular transaction. She's been facilitating the transfers, using her position as his assistant to bypass normal protocols. But she sloppy leaves digital fingerprints everywhere. The phone on my desk buzzes. Eleanor's name flashes on the screen. This time, I answer. Vivian, darling. Eleanor's voice carries that familiar note of superficial warmth. I trust you're not too busy to attend the foundation dinner tomorrow? Daniel tells me you've been quite preoccupied lately. Actually, Eleanor, I've been reviewing some fascinating financial records. I keep my tone light, including the foundation's offshore accounts. Tell me, did you know about those when you signed on as director? The silence on the other end stretches for 2 heartbeats. I'm sure I don't know what you mean, she says finally. Daniel handles all those details. Yes, he certainly does. I let the implications hang in the air. I'll see you at the dinner. After hanging up, I turn back to Miranda. The injunction came through this morning. Judge Phillips was particularly interested in the evidence of fund misappropriation. That's the 3rd legal victory this month, Miranda notes. Small wins, but they're adding up. Daniel hasn't noticed yet. I allow myself a small smile. He's too busy planning his next strategic masterstroke to realize his options are quietly being eliminated. A knock at the door interrupts us. Gregory enters, his usual confident stride shortened by urgency. Vivian, we need to talk. Daniel's called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow. I meet his concerned gaze with steady eyes. Perfect timing. He's planning something big, Gregory warns. I overheard him with Natalie something about a major transfer that needs to happen before the weekends. Let him try. I open my laptop, turning it to show them both the screen. Every account, every transaction, every hut's all here. Plus something else. I pull out the USB drive that took me weeks to locate, hidden behind the false back of Daniel's desk drawer. Want to guess what's on it? Miranda's eyes widen as she scans the contents I reveal. Gregory lets out a low whistle. The drive contains years of correspondence, revealing not just Daniel's fraud, but an entire network of collaborators. Board members bought with precisely timed favors. Regulators persuaded to look the other way. A web of deception with Daniel at its center, each thread now ready to be pulled apart. The question now, I say, closing the laptop with deliberate calm, is who else in his inner circle might be hiding similar secrets. Daniel's not the type to play these games alone. The silence that follows is heavy with implications. We all know there are more players in this game, more threads to unravel. But for now, this is enough. The first domino is perfectly positioned. I dismiss them both with quiet thanks, waiting until their footsteps fade, before allowing myself to really feel the weight of what's coming. Tomorrow, Daniel will walk into that board meeting with his usual arrogant swagger, never suspecting that his own wife has already ensured his downfall. I pick up the photo from my desk, Daniel and me at last year's charity gala, his arm around my waist, both of us smiling for the cameras. 10 years of marriage, and he never once imagined I could be his equal, let alone his downfall. That was his first mistake. It won't be his last. The sharp click of Daniel's Italian leather shoes echoes through the Financial Titans conference auditorium as he strides onto the stage. Even from my seat in the shadows of the back row, I can see the desperation crackling beneath his polished veneer. His custom Brioni suit chosen specifically for this moment, no doubt does little to mask the slight tremor in his hands as he grips the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, he booms, his voice carrying that manufactured confidence I've come to know so well. Today marks the beginning of a new era for Montgomery Financial. I watch the faces of the audience, noting how the seasoned investors exchange knowing glances. They sense it too, the barely contained panic behind his bravado. Daniel's always been an excellent performer, but today, his mask is slipping. Our legacy, he continues, the word catching slightly in his throat, will be restored to its former glory through bold new initiatives and groundbreaking investment strategies. A slight murmur ripples through the crowd. 2 rows ahead, I spot Harrison Chen, our largest institutional investor, leaning over to whisper something to his colleague. The subtle shake of his head speaks volumes. I slip out before Daniel finishes his speech, my heels silent against the plush carpet. There's work to be done. In my private office at Continental Bank headquarters, I stand before the evidence wall I've meticulously constructed over the past year. Financial statements fan out across my desk like fallen autumn leaves, each one telling its own story of Daniel's deception. A laptop screen glows with frozen frames from security footage Daniel and Natalie entering the Mandarin Oriental at midnight, emerging disheveled at dawn. My fingers trace the edge of a particularly damning document proof of wire transfers to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. The paper is cool and smooth beneath my touch, a stark contrast to the fire building in my chest. Something shifts inside me as I study these fragments of betrayal. I remember the young analyst I once was, fresh from Columbia's MBA program, believing in merit and hard work. The woman who spent countless nights building investment strategies that Daniel would later claim as his own. The wife who smiled graciously at Eleanor's backhanded compliments about my domestic talents. That woman is gone. In her place stands someone stronger, someone who spent years learning to play their game while building her own rulebook. I've weathered every storm they've thrown at me, each dismissal and humiliation adding another layer to my armor. The Metropolitan Grand Hotel's ballroom sparkles with old money and new ambitions. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the annual charity gala, where Manhattan's financial elite gather to congratulate themselves on their generosity. Daniel commands the stage as always, but tonight feels different. The air crackles with possibility. I position myself near the audiovisual control booth, nodding slightly to Thomas, the technician I've carefully cultivated as an ally over the past months. As Daniel launches into his usual self-aggrandizing speech, I feel the weight of the USB drive in my clutch. Success, Daniel proclaims, comes to those who dare to seize opportunity. Right on cue, the massive screen behind him flickers. His voice falters as the first slide appears, a detailed flowchart of his shadow companies in the British Virgin Islands. Another click, and bank statements materialize, showing millions flowing through a complex web of shell corporations. The room falls silent. I step forward, my voice steady and clear. I couldn't agree more about seizing opportunities, Daniel. His head whips around, eyes widening as he finally sees me. Lee sees me perhaps for the first time. The polished mask cracks completely, as more evidence floods the screen behind him. These opportunities, I continue, moving closer to the stage, were particularly seizing, weren't they? Especially the ones involving Cayman account number 85,392,174. Gasps and whispers ripple through the crowd. Daniel's face drains of color as he recognizes the account number, the one he thought was untraceable. I maintain eye contact, letting him see the steel behind my smile. In the aftermath, I gather with my allies in Continental Bank's secure boardroom. Gregory Barnes, the senior board member who's watched my rise with quiet approval, sits right. Miranda Chang, our brilliant head analyst, takes the seat to my left. Both have risked their careers to stand with me, and their loyalty won't go unrewarded. The regulatory filing is ready, Miranda reports, sliding a thick folder across the mahogany table. Every transaction, every shell company, every instance of fraud documented and verified. Gregory nods approvingly. The board members I've spoken with are prepared to act. Chen's group is on board as well. Daniel's support is crumbling by the hour. I open the folder, each page representing another nail in Daniel's coffin. Then let's begin. The press briefing at Continental Bank unfolds exactly as planned. Harold Matthews, our most senior board member, steps up to the podium with the gravitas of his 40 years in finance. Camera flashes illuminate his silver hair as he clears his throat. Today, we recognize the extraordinary integrity and leadership of Vivian Montgomery, he announces, his voice carrying through the packed room. Her diligence in uncovering financial irregularities has protected not only our institution, but the entire financial community. I stand to the side, watching reporters frantically scribbling notes. The evidence speaks for itself: pristine documentation of every fraudulent transaction, every misrepresented deal, every betrayal of trust. Later that evening, I find myself alone in the penthouse office. The city lights twinkle below, a constellation of possibilities. I think about the young intern who once brought Daniel his coffee, who watched silently as he claimed credit for her market analyses. The wife who endured Eleanor's cutting remarks at charity galas, who smiled and poured more wine while they dismissed her accomplishments. My hand trembles slightly as I open the leather-bound journal, a gift from my father when I graduated business school. On its fresh pages, I begin to write. To the women who were told to stay quiet, who were patted on the head and told to know their place. Your time is coming. The next morning brings a flurry of activity. My inner circle convenes in the secure boardroom, each person armed with their assigned tasks. Legal experts pore over documents. Media specialists craft precise statements. Financial analysts track every dollar through the labyrinth of Daniel's deception. The SEC filing goes live at 9, Miranda announces, her eyes bright with anticipation. Every major financial news outlet is standing by. Gregory adjusts his tie, a hint of satisfaction in his weathered features. The board vote is scheduled for tomorrow. It's unanimous. I survey the room, these carefully chosen allies who've helped orchestrate Daniel's downfall. Then we move to phase 2. Standing before my office mirror, I smooth down my Chanel suit and touch the USB drive in my pocket. Inside lies the final piece of evidence: testimony from James Morrison, Daniel's former right-hand man, detailing years of systematic fraud and manipulation. The video confession is devastating in its detail. James names names, provides dates, outlines exactly how Daniel built his house of cards. His hands shake as he describes the offshore accounts, the falsified reports, the strategic affairs meant to ensure silence. I secure the drive in my safe and send a single text to our media contact. Tomorrow. Daniel has no idea what's coming. None of them do. And that's exactly how I want it. The mahogany doors of Continental Bank's boardroom swing open before me. My heels click against marble as I stride to the podium. USB drive clutched in my palm like a loaded weapon. Around the massive oval table, board members shift in their leather chairs, their faces a mix of curiosity and concern. Daniel sits at the far end, his usual smirk frozen in place as I take my position. Good morning, I say, my voice steady despite the thundering in my chest. I've prepared a detailed analysis of our offshore holdings that requires immediate attention. The projector hums to life. As the first slide appears, Daniel's smirk evaporates. His eyes lock onto mine, recognition dawning as he sees his own transaction records splashed across the screen. 10 years of fraudulent transfers, shell companies, and creative accounting, all meticulously documented and color-coded. As you can see, I continue, advancing through the slides with practiced precision. These discrepancies represent a significant breach of fiduciary duty. My finger traces a particularly damning graph. Note the pattern of transfers to the Cayman accounts, each occurring precisely 3 days after our major acquisitions. A gasp ripples through the room. Daniel springs to his feet, his tailored suit suddenly looking oddly rumpled. This is absurd, he sputters. Vivian clearly doesn't understand the complexity of these transactions. I can explain. Please do. I interrupt, my voice arctic. Explain why these transfers match exactly with the strategy I proposed last year, the one you dismissed as amateur thinking before implementing it through your shadow accounts. Eleanor rises from her seat, her pearls catching the fluorescent light. This is hardly the time or place for domestic grievances, dear. Her saccharine tone could rot teeth. Perhaps we should adjourn and discuss this privately. On the contrary, I pull up the next slide. These aren't domestic grievances, Eleanor. They're federal crimes, and your signature appears on quite a few of these documents. The color drains from her face. Behind her, Gregory, me longtime ally on the board, leans forward with keen interest. I catch his slight nod and press on. The SEC will receive copies of this report within the hour, I announce, watching Daniel's desperate glances toward the exit. But first, I believe the board deserves to understand exactly how their trust has been betrayed. For the next 30 minutes, I dissect Daniel's empire of lies. Each revelation lands like a precision strike, dismantling his carefully constructed facade piece by piece. When I finally pause, the silence in the room is deafening. This is nothing but a vindictive witch hunt. Daniel declares, but his voice wavers. He fumbles with his tie, a tell I've observed countless times during our marriage. The board knows my track record, my expertise. Your expertise? I pull up his latest acquisition proposal. You mean like this strategy, which you copied verbatim from my private files? The timestamp on the original document might interest the board. Miranda, my trusted analyst, distributes thick folders containing additional evidence. I watch board members' eyes widen as they flip through pages of irrefutable proof. The whispers start, growing louder with each damning document. The press conference begins in 20 minutes. I remind them, gathering my materials. I suggest you decide quickly where you stand, because in half an hour this becomes public knowledge. Daniel lurches toward me, desperation etched across his face. Vivian, please, we can work this out. Think about what you're doing to the family. I meet his gaze, remembering countless dinners where I sat silent while he claimed credit for my work. Years of condescension wrapped in charitable smiles. The constant, crushing weight of his carefully crafted lies. I have thought about it, I reply, my voice clear and cold as crystal. That's why my timing is perfect. The boardroom door opens, and I glimpse reporters gathering in the lobby beyond. Right on schedule. I gather my papers unhurried, feeling the weight of every eye in the room. One more thing, I add, pausing at the door. You might want to ask Natalie about the real purpose of her recent trips to Singapore. I have copies of those records too. Daniel's face goes slack. In his expression, I see the moment he realizes just how completely I've outmaneuvered him. 10 years of being underestimated, of playing the quiet, supportive wife, have led to this perfectly orchestrated moment of revelation. I step into the lobby, where cameras flash and microphones thrust forward. Behind me, through the closing door, I hear the beginning of Daniel's downfall. The raised voices, the accusations, the first cracks in his carefully constructed world. My team moves with practiced efficiency. Gregory steps up to the podium first, his gravitas as senior board member lending weight to every word. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, today we've uncovered evidence of systematic fraud within Continental Bank's upper management. But Daniel isn't finished. He bursts through the boardroom doors, Eleanor trailing behind him. This is a coordinated attack, he announces to the assembled reporters. I've prepared documentation that will prove. He stops mid-sentence, as his presentation appears on the screen behind him. Instead of his prepared defense, the projector displays more of my evidence: emails, bank statements, phone records. The room erupts in camera flashes. I catch Miranda's subtle smile as she pockets the thumb drive she just switched. Another piece falls perfectly into place. I retreat to a private conference room where my core team awaits. Gregory joins us minutes later, his expression grim but satisfied. The regulatory authorities have been notified, he confirms, and the major financial networks are already running the story. Miranda's tablet displays real-time market reactions. Continental Bank stock hasn't crashed, evidence of how carefully we've managed this revelation. Instead, it holds steady, as investors respond to our promise of transparency and reform. Daniel's looking for Michael, Miranda reports, scanning her messages. He knows someone had to help compile all this evidence. I nod, remembering the late nights spent with our whistleblower, piecing together the puzzle of Daniel's deception. Michael, the compliance officer who'd finally grown a conscience, had been instrumental, but he's safely out of reach now. A knock at the door interrupts our discussion. A junior analyst enters, tablet in hand. Miss Montgomery, you need to see this. She pulls up a video feed from the main lobby. Daniel stands surrounded by reporters, his composure completely shattered. But it's the figure behind him that catches my attention, a woman I've never seen before, speaking intently with Eleanor. Who is she? I ask, though something in my gut already knows the answer. Gregory leans closer to the screen. That's Alexandra Chen. She was Daniel's partner in the Singapore venture. My pulse quickens. Alexandra Chen, the name appears in none of our files, yet here she stands in our lobby. Her presence suggests a whole new layer to Daniel's schemes, one even I hadn't uncovered. Get me everything you can find on her, I tell Miranda. I have a feeling she's the key to something much bigger than we imagined. As my team disperses to their tasks, I remain at the window, watching Daniel's world crumble in real time. But it's the mystery of Alexandra Chen that occupies my thoughts. Something tells me this revelation isn't the end of our story, it's merely the beginning of a much larger truth, waiting to be uncovered. The journalists' cameras flash like lightning as Daniel steps up to the podium at Continental Bank's press conference. His Armani suit can't hide the slight tremor in his hands as he shuffles his papers. I watch from the back of the room, letting the familiar mask of the dutiful wife settle over my features. These allegations are baseless, Daniel declares, his voice echoing through the marble columned hall. Continental Bank will pursue aggressive legal action against any party spreading such malicious falsehoods about our financial practices. I catch the slight twitch in his left eye, the tell he's had since college when he's lying. The reporters exchange glances, pens hovering over notepads. They sense blood in the water. My phone buzzes silently in my hand. Another board member has just confirmed their support. That makes 7 out of 9. I allow myself a small sip of water to hide my smile. Furthermore, Daniel continues, my wife Vivian and I stand united against these baseless accusations. His eyes scan the crowd, searching for me. When they find my face, I give him the same placid smile I've perfected over years of family dinners. If he only knew what's in my briefcase. The next 3 days pass in a blur of legal notices and media calls. I watch from my home office as social media explodes with each new revelation. Financial bloggers dissect Daniel's statement, pointing out the inconsistencies. Continental Bank fraud trends on Twitter. Mrs. Montgomery, my assistant's voice comes through the intercom. The car is ready for the corporate summit. I smooth down my midnight blue Chanel suit and check my reflection. The woman staring back at me isn't the same one who discovered those offshore accounts 3 months ago. Her eyes are harder, sharper. The Metropolitan Convention Center buzzes with nervous energy as I make my way to the podium. Board members shift in their seats. Industry leaders crane their necks. In the front row, Eleanor's perfectly Botoxed face struggles to maintain its usual condescending smile. Good morning, I say into the microphone, my voice carrying across the hushed room. Today, I'd like to share some information about Continental Bank's recent activities. The first slide appears on the massive screen behind me, a series of email exchanges between Daniel and his offshore contacts, each damning word highlighted in yellow. On the 15th of March of this year, I continue, a series of unauthorized transfers began moving through accounts in the Cayman Islands. More slides, more evidence, bank statements, time-stamped security footage of late-night meetings. Daniel's face grows paler with each revelation. The complete dossier has been distributed to each of you, I say, gesturing to the sleek folders being passed out by my team. You'll find every transaction documented, every communication logged, every participant identified. Eleanor's hands shake as she opens her copy. I remember her words at that Christmas dinner. Vivian, darling, leave the complex financial matters to Daniel. That's what good wives do. The evidence unfolds like a carefully choreographed dance. Each new revelation builds on the last, weaving a tapestry of deception that even Daniel's most loyal supporters can't ignore. When I reveal the recorded conversation between him and Natalie discussing the fraudulent transfers, a gasp ripples through the crowd. And finally, I say, my voice steady, I draw your attention to page 394. A complete audit of the shell companies created under Continental Bank's umbrella, each traceable back to this man. I turn to face Daniel directly. A man who claims sole credit for investment strategies he stole from his own wife. The silence in the room is absolute. Daniel stands, his chair scraping against the floor. This is ridiculous, he sputters. You can't possibly. I can and I have. I cut him off, my voice like steel. Every document has been verified by 3 independent auditing firms. Every recording authenticated. Every transaction traced. The room erupts in chaos. Reporters scramble for their phones. Board members huddle in urgent conferences. Through it all, I maintain my position at the podium, watching as Daniel's carefully constructed world crumbles. This concludes my presentation, I say into the microphone. Though I should mention, I pause, letting the room quiet. There's an interesting call log from last week that the SEC might want to examine. It seems someone has been rather busy coordinating with certain parties in the Caymans. Daniel's face goes from red to white. He knows exactly which call I mean. As I gather my materials, a young analyst approaches the podium. Mrs. Montgomery, she whispers, pressing a note into my hand. You need to see this. It's about Mr. Thorne. I unfold the paper, reading the message twice. A slow smile spreads across my face. It seems Daniel's closest advisor has been playing his own game all along. And I now know exactly how to use that information. The game isn't over yet. Legal analysts crowd the hallway outside, their voices rising over each other as they dissect the implications. Largest financial fraud case of the decade? One declares into his phone. Continental Bank stock is already dropping. Another adds. I watch Daniel's empire crumble in real time on my tablet. Our shareholders are jumping ship, their confidence shattered by the weight of undeniable evidence. Social media influencers who once praised Daniel's financial genius are now calling for criminal investigations. Eleanor corners me by the elevator, her perfectly manicured nails digging into her designer purse. You've destroyed this family, she hisses. No, Eleanor. I meet her gaze steadily. I've exposed the truth. There's a difference. The elevator doors open, and Gregory Barnes, our most senior board member, steps out. Mrs. Montgomery, he says, emphasizing my title, the board has called an emergency session. We'd like you to join us as acting CEO. I hear Eleanor's sharp intake of breath. The whispers ripple through the gathered crowd. Daniel, still visible through the conference room's glass walls, slumps in his chair as his phone lights up with what I assume is the news. But it's the note in my hand that truly captures my attention. Mr. Thorne, Daniel's right-hand man for 15 years, didn't just help him hide money, he kept his own detailed records. Records that implicate not just Daniel, but half of his inner circle in a conspiracy that makes today's revelations look like a warm-up act. I step into the elevator, my heels clicking against the marble floor. Coming, Eleanor? I ask, holding the door. I believe the board will have some questions about your role as compliance officer. The doors close on her stricken face. I allow myself a small, satisfied smile as I ascend to the top floor. Phase 1 is complete. Now for the real game to begin. The sun stretches golden fingers across Manhattan's skyline as I step out of my town car, breathing in the crisp morning air. My Louboutins click against the polished concrete as I enter the sleek co-working space that now serves as my empire's command center. No more mahogany-paneled walls or suffocating traditions. Here, glass and steel rise in clean lines toward the sky, much like my own trajectory since breaking free from Daniel's shadow. My assistant hands me a steaming cup of coffee as I scan my morning briefings. The latest quarterly reports show Continental Bank stock has surged another 15% since I took the helm. A small smile plays at my lips as I remember Eleanor's dire predictions about the company's future under my leadership. The same predictions that now gather dust alongside her son's shattered reputation. Later that evening, I host an intimate rooftop dinner for my closest allies. The setting sun paints the city in shades of amber and rose, so different from the oppressive crystal chandeliers that once hung over similar gatherings. Gregory raises his glass, his eyes crinkling with genuine warmth. To new beginnings, he says. The words echo in my mind, transporting me back to that fateful family dinner where Daniel had sneered at my market analysis. Asterisk? Vivian, darling. Asterisk, he'd said. Asterisk. Leave the real business discussions to those who understand them. Asterisk. Now, as I sip my wine and survey my trusted circle, I savor how thoroughly I've proved him wrong. The next afternoon finds me at Le Bernardin, where an antique family portrait hanging on the wall catches my eye. The oil painting depicts a patriarch surrounded by his doting family, not unlike those suffocating dinners where Daniel held court while I silently gathered evidence of his crimes. But today, the memory holds no power over me. I've transformed each bitter lesson into fuel for my ascension. My new position as CEO demands a certain flair for theater, and I don't disappoint. The renovated Continental Bank headquarters buzzes with energy as I orchestrate our annual stakeholder meeting. The grand dining hall where Daniel once boasted of his non-existent genius now serves as my stage. I move through the crowd with measured grace, watching board members who once dismissed me now lean in eagerly to catch my every word. Finding solitude becomes a precious commodity these days, but I make time for reflection. Central Park offers a quiet sanctuary where I can write in my leather-bound journal, documenting this extraordinary journey. A gentle breeze rustles the pages as I pen my thoughts about resilience and transformation. Each entry marks another victory, another step away from the woman who once suffered in silence. The sun sets on another milestone as I raise a champagne flute on the rooftop of our downtown office. Miranda catches my eye from across the gathering, and we share a knowing look. She's been promoted to Chief Strategy Officer, a position she earned through loyalty and brilliant insight. Around us, the celebration pulses with genuine camaraderie. These are my people now. Allies who stood firm when the storm of scandal threatened to sweep away everything we'd built. Miss Montgomery? A young voice pulls me from my reverie. Rachel, my newest mentee from Columbia Business School, clutches her portfolio with nervous energy. I recognize that mixture of ambition and uncertainty. I wore it myself, once. Leading her to a quiet corner of the classroom, I begin sharing the hard-won wisdom that transformed me from a silenced wife into the architect of my own destiny. The day ends as it began, with me standing tall against the Manhattan skyline. My office on the top floor of our headquarters offers a commanding view of the empire I've reclaimed. Awards line the shelves, each one earned through strategic brilliance rather than stolen credit. A framed newspaper article catches the fading light. Continental Bank soars under new leadership. Vivian Montgomery transforms industry standards. I press my palm against the cool glass, watching the city lights begin to twinkle alive. Below, the streets pulse with possibility. Tomorrow brings new challenges, new opportunities to reshape the financial landscape. But tonight, I savor this moment of perfect clarity. The woman reflected in the window is no longer anyone's silent partner or supportive wife. She is simply, powerfully, irrevocably herself. And that is the sweetest revenge of all.